Wow, it is good to be in Michigan today. And my friends, I stand here confidently saying that in 11 days we're going to turn Michigan red and make Donald Trump the next president of the United States. Now, we have some great people here. First of all, he's become like an old friend, GOP Chair Pete Hoekstra. Pete, thank you so much for being here and for all your hard work in our state here. We've got Committeewoman Hema Kolana-Garetti. Oh, I did okay? All right, okay. Thank you, ma'am. I apologize if I butchered your name there, but I appreciate you being here and for all your hard work here. And then, of course, we've got the great founder of Auto Workers for Trump, Brian Penbecker. Brian, where are you? There we are, man. There he is. That guy is working so hard, and he told me a story. That happened today or yesterday? Today. You cannot make this up. This shows, I'm telling you, that Providence is smiling on the Trump campaign because they were doing a rally at an auto plant not far from here, and right at the moment they were doing the rally outside, the fire alarm inside went off. So they had about 1,000 people come outside in the middle of a Trump rally, and they started cheering and screaming. And I think that means auto workers are going for Trump. That is a good thing. That is a good thing. So, I got to tell you, you know, the last couple weeks I've been having such a good time that I've started to feel bad for Tim Walz. The spirit of bipartisanship is alive and well right now because I realized I've got the easiest job in American politics, and Tim Walz has got the hardest job in American politics. Think about this. Poor Governor Walz, he's got to go around and try to convince the American people that Kamala Harris didn't cause the highest inflation in 40 years. He's got to go around and pretend that Kamala Harris didn't open the American southern border, even though that she bragged that she was going to do it. He's got to go around and pretend that Kamala Harris is ready to lead the world's greatest military, even though she's afraid to answer a tough question from a reporter. That's a pretty hard job. Now think about my job. I got to go around and talk about the fact that when Donald Trump was president, we had the lowest inflation we had had in 40 years. I got to talk about the fact that when Donald Trump was president, take-home pay was rising faster than it had in a generation. And I get to go around and talk about the fact that under Donald Trump's leadership, we put America first and closed the border. Now that is a record that we're all proud of, and that is a record that in just 12 short days we are going to bring back to the Oval Office when we make Donald Trump the President-elect of the United States. Now I got to say too, you know, Kamala Harris she's an interesting person, isn't she? I don't know that I've ever seen a person a Democrat or a Republican who wants to be the President of the United States but seems to have no idea what she actually wants to do when she's president. Now, you know these interviews that she does, now normally they would say that a softball interview is the best thing for a candidate because, you know, you get asked a softball question, then you get to talk about whatever you want to. Well, the problem I think we've realized with Kamala Harris is that with a softball interview, you still got to be able to hit a softball. And every time that Kamala Harris does an interview, I think that we gain about 50,000 or 100,000 votes. Now, I'm going to say something to the great people of Michigan here because, you know, obviously I'm a political candidate. Don't take my words for it. Take Kamala Harris in her own words. Because a couple of weeks ago, she gave an interview to a program called The View. We watched The View. See, this is my sacrifice, ladies and gentlemen, as I watch Kamala Harris on The View so that you don't have to. And I'm proud to serve. But that's maybe the hardest part of my job is watching programs like The View when Kamala Harris goes on. Well, she goes on The View, and I believe I was in Tucson, Arizona, and I get a phone call from the president's communications director, a guy by the name of Jason Miller. You've probably seen Jason on TV. He's a good guy. He does a good job. So Jason calls me, and he's like a kid the night before Christmas. He's like, Senator, did you see this interview? And I said, no, I haven't seen the interview. He said, they asked her whether she was going to do anything different from Joe Biden, and she said, nothing comes to mind. Now again, the clip is out there for the people watching at home on TV. Go and watch the clip where they ask Kamala Harris, would you have done anything differently from Joe Biden? And she says, nothing comes to mind. Now in her defense, that maybe could be the slogan of the Kamala Harris campaign. Nothing comes to mind. Because there's no substance. There's no substance at the Kamala Harris campaign. There's no agenda at the Kamala Harris campaign. All there is a record of higher prices, unaffordable groceries, and a wide open southern border. And our message from the state of Michigan and all over the country in 12 days to Kamala Harris is going to be, you are fired. Go back to San Francisco. We don't need you in Michigan. We don't need you in the White House. Now, one of the reasons I love to be in Michigan is that we have got the proudest tradition of craftsmanship and of making things in the great state of Michigan. And look, I'm a Buckeye. It is hard for me to say nice things about Michigan. But thank you. Remember, the vote that matters, the battle that matters, is making Donald Trump the next president of the United States. That's what can unite Buckeyes and Wolverines. It's like the lion laying down with the lamb. Thank you. So, here's the thing. Under Donald Trump, the American auto industry, our great Michigan auto workers were thriving. And the reason we were doing better than we had in 30 years is because Donald Trump recognized something that, frankly, Republican and Democrat leaders, both parties, had neglected. And it's that if foreign corporations want to use slave labor in China or Mexico, the only way to fight to protect American workers is tariffs. Slap a big fat tariff when they try to bring that crap back into our country. That's how you protect Michigan auto workers. Now, you see Kamala Harris every day. She's attacking the concept of tariffs, but when you attack that, you are attacking the future of the Michigan auto industry. And it's not just that. It's not just that she wants to destroy the Michigan auto industry. It's that she wants to tax all of us so that we can buy electric vehicles made in China. It's the worst economic plan in this country, and it's especially bad for the people of Michigan. Because here's the thing. All of the mining is done in China. All of the materials and the supply chain is in China. So when Kamala Harris says we're going to tax American workers so that they can buy cars, force them to buy cars made in China, what Donald Trump thinks is, first of all, this is America and you ought to be able to drive whatever in the hell car you want to. That's principle one. And principle two is that we ought to be buying cars, we ought to be buying automobiles that are made in the United States of America with Michigan craftsmanship and Michigan workers. But let's just recount a couple of the bad things that have happened to the auto industry just since Kamala Harris became our vice president. Stellantis announced that it would permanently lay off 2,500 Michigan auto workers, the folks who are making the Ram 1500. And we know a lot of those jobs are going to Mexico or being destroyed altogether. Last year, General Motors let go 1,300 workers at 2 Michigan plants, and Ford, even as we speak, is rolling back electric vehicle production. That is the record of Kamala Harris, and that is the record of a person who is trying to destroy the Michigan auto industry. So here, to all the workers, to their families, my solemn promise is that when Donald Trump is back in the White House, you will have a fighter for the Michigan auto industry and the people who go to work in Michigan auto factories every single day. And I hate to say it, more bad news. I'm giving you nightmare fuel, but I'm giving you nightmare fuel so that we make sure that Kamala Harris doesn't become the president, right? That's what we're here to do. But her electric vehicle mandate, basically trying to force every American to buy electric vehicles, and again, most of them are made in China, what that would do is that would put 117,000 auto workers out of a job. Isn't that crazy? Isn't it crazy to have an American leader, a person who's running for president of the United States, appear to not give a damn about one of the most important industries in the United States of America? And here is Donald Trump's plan. It's very simple for how we're going to lower prices, but we're also going to bring back more American manufacturing. Number one is you got to make it cheaper to manufacture in the first place, and you got to make it cheaper for Americans to buy energy. The answer is drill, baby, drill. That is the energy plan that's going to put this country back on track. Number two, Kamala Harris. Let's do a little compare and contrast. Kamala Harris is running around, and I've never seen this in my life, a politician running around saying she's going to raise your taxes. Normally, even the ones who want to raise your taxes lie to you and tell you they plan to cut them. But Kamala Harris is going around saying that she wants to raise taxes on American workers and reward corporations that ship jobs overseas. And I think that gets it exactly upside down. Donald Trump is going to cut taxes for American workers and punish the corporations that are shipping American jobs overseas. And of course, that's not the only difference, because while Kamala Harris opened the American southern border, she bragged about it. On day one, she became the border czar, and they did 94 executive orders, suspending deportations, stopping Donald Trump's Remain in Mexico policy, opening the floodgates to illegal immigration in the United States of America. And it's not just that. It's not just that she welcomed illegal aliens into this country in record numbers. It's that Kamala Harris wants to give them free Social Security and Medicare. And of course, it ain't free, because you're all paying for it. So here's the difference between Kamala Harris. While she wants to open the country to millions upon millions of illegal aliens, and while she's promising to give them free health care, housing, and Social Security benefits, Donald Trump has a different message. In 4 months, pack your bags, because you're going back home. Now, the media always talks about compassion, the need to be compassionate. And I agree, we ought to be compassionate. But let me say two things about compassion. Number one, our compassion, American leadership's compassion, has to start with American citizens, with people who have the right to be here in the first place. Because think about this, when you let in all of these millions upon millions of illegal aliens, what the media never talks about when it talks about compassion is, how about compassion for the millions of American children who can't get a good education because their school districts are overwhelmed with people who can't speak the local language? How about we talk about compassion for the millions of Americans who are mourning their relatives who died of a fentanyl overdose from the poison brought in by the Mexican drug cartels? How about compassion for people who are waiting for 3 and 4 hours at hospital emergency rooms because we've let in so many people that the American citizenry can't get access to health care at their own hospitals? Let's have compassion for those American citizens. And let's have compassion for the millions of young Americans who would like to buy a home but can't because housing is unaffordable in the United States of America. And this is something, my friends, the press never wants to talk about this, but here, if you want to solve the housing problem, if you want to make housing more affordable for America's people, you got to do two things. Number one, cut out the ridiculous regulations, lower energy costs, and build more housing. That's number one. You got to build more housing. But number two, you got to make sure that American homes go to American citizens, not to people who have no legal right to be in this country. Think about this. When you let 25 million people in your country, you got to put them somewhere. And we know, by the way, that a lot of them are staying in five-star hotels at taxpayer expense, but a lot of them are taking homes that ought by right go to American citizens. Look, I don't begrudge anybody who wants to come to the United States and make a better life for themselves, but number one, you got to come through proper channels and you got to do it the right way. And number two, we need an American president who recognizes the first responsibility of that president is to the American citizenry. We need Donald J. Trump back in the White House. I mean, it's so amazing because I've been running for vice president all of about 3 months. And you get a perspective on this country that will make you so hopeful and so optimistic. I have so much faith in the American people, in your dreams, in your talents, in your abilities. And then on the other hand, I'm so frustrated because those dreams and talents are being held back by the broken leadership of Washington, D.C. I hope that all of us, as frustrated as we sometimes get with Kamala Harris's leadership, as much as we are sometimes angry that Kamala Harris is promising to do more of the same inflation, more of the same high grocery prices, more of the same open border, that when we get Kamala Harris out of the Oval Office, we're going to have a golden age of prosperity under Donald Trump's leadership. I really believe that. We got the best people. We just got to set them free. But here is the crazy thing about what we've done to this country. We've got 425,000 criminal illegal immigrants in the United States of America. That's an unbelievable number. That's more than twice the size. I'm proud to have served 4 years in the United States Marine Corps. That's more than twice the size of the United States Marine Corps. And we got some Marines over here. Thank you for your service, sir. Well, that's okay. We gave the Marines a shout out. We got in the Army. We got some soldiers in here. All right, go Army. Thank you for your service. How about the Air Force? We got any Air Force folks in here. There we go. My friend Fallon. How many sailors? We got any sailors? There we go. And I know we're in Michigan. We got to have some Coast Guardsmen in the great state of Michigan. God bless you guys. Thank all of you for your service. And here's the thing that we have got to do a better job at, is we got to do a better job at reminding Americans and the people who put on the uniform that we respect, we love them, we admire them, and we're going to fight for them. And what kind of message does it send to American veterans when thousands of them are sleeping under bridges and on park benches, but we've got 425,000 illegal criminal migrants in the United States of America? It sends the wrong message. But we're going to send a message when Donald Trump is president that we respect and honor every person who put on the uniform in this country, and we're going to fight for you, and we're going to fight for your safety, for your security, and for your prosperity. Now, I'm going to open the floor up to some media questions here in a second, but I want to leave you with one final thought before we take some questions from the reporters. I really believe, I talked to Pete Hoekstra about this earlier today, I'm not BSing you. I think we're going to win the state of Michigan, and we're going to win the whole presidency for this country. I really do. There's a but. There's a but. We're only going to win if we get out there and vote. And not just get ourselves out there and vote, but get our friends and family out to vote too. So I'm going to make 3 requests of you before we turn the floor over to the reporters and ask some questions. Number 1, I want every single person in this room, in this hangar, to get out there and vote 10 times. Now it's going to be a Washington Post headline, Vance encourages voter fraud in Michigan. Here's the legal way. The legal way that we're going to vote 10 times is we're going to take ourselves to the polls, and we're going to take 9 friends and family along with us. That is the good old-fashioned legal way to vote 10 times. Because you even just go back to 2020, you look at the margins on some of these states, If every single person here gets 10 voters to the polls, that could be the difference between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump sitting in the Oval Office for the next 4 years. And I know all of us, we want to wake up on November the 6th, yes, victorious, but knowing that we did everything that we could to get Donald J. Trump across the finish line. So get out there and get everybody to vote. That's request number one. Now, request number two is, I know a lot of you, I've seen you already take photos already. I want you before the end, maybe while I'm taking questions from reporters, maybe you want to take a selfie, go out there and post it on whatever social media you use. Even if it's just texting and emailing people, tell them why you're voting for Donald J. Trump. Because think about this, a lot of people are never going to hear the truth, not from the Kamala Harris campaign, and certainly not from their corporate media allies, but they can hear the truth from their friends and family. So let's commit to telling the truth over the next 12 days that Donald Trump is the president of peace and of prosperity for the American people. And here's the final request, and I want to read this to make sure I get it right. SwampTheVoteUSA.com. That is a website, SwampTheVoteUSA.com. And you know on that website you can get information about requesting an absentee ballot, about where to vote, about checking your registration. We had in-person early voting begins everywhere in Michigan this Saturday. Right, Pete? That's right, okay? Now look, I'm the world's biggest critic of election season over election day. But as Donald Trump says, it is what it is. And if Kamala Harris's folks are going to use every method they can to get people to the polls, Republicans, we got to do the exact same thing. The rules are the rules. We're going to win this game. We're going to win this game by playing by the rules, but not if everybody waits to vote until Election Day. Okay? We got to get out there and vote and bank as many votes as possible. I had a person earlier. We started out today. We did a town hall outside of Detroit, and then we went and did the Oakland County GOP headquarters where people were working hard and phone banking, and I was really proud of them and really glad to spend some time with them. But the thing that we've got to remember is that the Democrats are trying to bank as many votes as possible before Election Day, right? They're trying to go into the game with the score as good for them as possible, so why don't we do the exact same thing and get out there and vote and make our voices heard? We got to do it. So if we do those things, we're going to win this election. We're going to give the American people a president that is actually fit to lead the greatest country in the world. We're going to win Michigan, and we're going to win the United States of America. God bless you guys. Thank you for having me. I love this state, and I'll be back soon. Thank you all. Now, before we leave, we'll take a few questions from the reporters. Let's start with the local folks, as we always do, and if we've got time, we'll go to the national pool afterwards.
Senator, good evening. My name's Dave Kinchin. I'm a reporter with Fox 2 in Detroit, sir. As you know, these polls are very tight, especially right here in Michigan within the margin of error. My question, sir, I wanted to get your reaction to President Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly, who told the New York Times that Trump would rule like a dictator and meets the definition of a fascist. Just want to get your reaction, sir.
Yeah, look, you could just record the boos of the crowd, and that's my response to that question. Look, here's the thing about what John Kelly said. John Kelly was fired by Donald Trump, and he's pissed off about it, and he won't stop talking about it. Now, look, here's the thing. Every time that John Kelly says something happened, you've got 3 or 4 people who were allegedly in the room when it happened saying he's making it up. Even Mike Pence's chief of staff said that John Kelly is making up a bunch of crap about Donald J. Trump. So who do we believe? Do we believe multiple eyewitnesses, or do we believe a disgruntled ex-employee? I believe the multiple eyewitnesses. I think everything that John Kelly said is not true. But I also think, I mean, look, you guys are reporters, and I think a lot of the folks here know how this works. John Kelly didn't come out of his own volition. I guarantee he talked to somebody on Kamala Harris's campaign beforehand. And we got to ask ourselves, why are the media, and most importantly, why is Kamala Harris talking about a disgruntled former employee instead of the fact that under her leadership, grocery prices are up 25% in the state of Michigan? Instead of talking about something that happened 5 years ago, why doesn't Kamala Harris talk about what happened 2 years ago when she cast the deciding vote on trillions of dollars in new spending and made housing, energy, and groceries unaffordable for the people of Michigan? And I not as a vice presidential contender or as a political candidate in this race, I speak as an American citizen, and I am offended for my fellow American citizens when a person is running for president of the United States not on what she's going to do for the American people, but on a bunch of petty grievances from years ago. Talk about the future, Kamala Harris. Talk about what you want to do, and shut the hell up about what happened 4 years ago. Next question.
Hi, Senator John
That was
King.
loud.
I am a loud person. John King with Michigan Advance. You were talking about the centerpiece of former President Trump's economic plan being tariffs. Could you maybe explain more in terms of tariffs are paid by the consumer? In fact, putting a tariff on anything is a tax on American consumers. So if you could explain that, if that's wrong, explain how a tariff is not paid by the consumer.
Here's why this is wrong. So first of all, let me give you a very precise example, and then two, let me try to understand the theory behind it. Number one, we actually already had a president who imposed tariffs on China, who brought back American manufacturing, and when that president, Donald J. Trump, was president, inflation was 1.5%. So we know that tariffs can protect American workers and also keep inflation low. That's the first thing. The second thing here is we have to ask ourselves, okay, let's say you're a factory and you're deciding whether to invest in the United States of America or to manufacture in China using literal slave labor. I mean, people making $3 a day. I don't want American workers making $3 a day. I want them to earn the kind of wage that can support a family, okay? So here's the thing. You make the stuff in China at $3 a day, and then you try to bring it into the United States and you undercut the wages of American workers. But if you impose a fat tariff on people who are trying to import that stuff, then American factories and American corporations invest in American workers. That creates good jobs, it creates good products, and it makes us more self-reliant. Because here, we have to remember the same people that said that tariffs always lead to price increases are the same people who said that it would make our country richer if we let China and Mexico manufacture all of our stuff. Now, we all should have learned the hard way during the COVID pandemic. Remember, when hospitals couldn't get hospital gowns and surgical masks for their surgeons because all that crap was made in China. So Americans are paying more for health care. We don't have the medicine and the equipment that we need. We're poorer off, and we're also more reliant on our biggest adversary in the world. That is not a path to prosperity. That is a path ultimately to national slavery. Donald Trump's economic agenda is the path to prosperity and freedom for American people.
Senator, hi. My name is Rudolph Snyder with 7 News Detroit, the ABC affiliate here in Detroit.
Thank you.
With the auto industry such a main focus of tonight, I wanted to ask you, what does the future of the auto industry look like for you in 10 and 20 years? Is there any room for EVs or hybrids?
Oh, sure. I think there's a huge amount of room for EVs and hybrids, but for EVs and hybrids that are hopefully made in the United States of America. And now look, this part of the reason that tariffs matter is they also give us leverage in negotiating against our competitors. Now, you go to Europe or you go to China, how many American automobiles do you see on the roads? Very, very few, because they have decided to protect their native manufacturing industries, whereas under Kamala Harris's leadership, we basically said, you're on your own. We're going to let foreign corporations and foreign countries poach our industries. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, here's what I think it's going to look like. But the important point is, it doesn't matter what J.D. Vance or even Donald Trump thinks the industry is going to look like in 15 years, American consumers ought to make the decisions about what cars they want to drive. And they're going to determine what the industry looks like in 10 or 15 years. But I think that probably what it looks like is that you've got a lot of people driving gas-powered cars. You've got probably 20% of the country that it's driving some kind of an EV or a hybrid, and that's about how it shakes out, because that's what I think the American people want. And fundamentally, the Donald Trump economic agenda is about empowering Americans to make their own choices about what they want to buy and how they want to live, and that's how we're going to pursue our economic policy. Thank you.
Hi, Senator. My name is Hannah Mackey with the Detroit News. You've spoken out against Chinese battery maker Gotion coming to Michigan. Do you have any reaction to the Politico story that says Gotion was paying Trump campaign manager Susie Wiles' lobbying firm nearly $1 million?
No, I don't have a comment because I've never seen that story. I will certainly read that story and try to understand what's going on there. But what I will say is that President Trump and by the way, you know, I forgot to give a shout out to is the great Senate candidate Mike Rogers, who's doing a hell of a job. And I think that we ought to get out there and vote for him. But I think the simple fact is that we want American businesses to hire American workers and to invest in the American economy. That's what we want. The problem with the Gotion facility is fundamentally we're talking about Chinese investment, which doesn't make us more self-reliant. In fact, I think it probably makes us more reliant on the Communist Chinese Party. The whole principle behind Donald Trump's approach to economics is that if we're more self-reliant as a people, think about that. That means fewer people who are on welfare and more people who have a dignified middle-class job. That means that if we, God forbid, get into a war, we can make our own weapons that our troops are carrying instead of relying on some foreign corporation. Let me give you two statistics that really ought to scare the hell out of us, my friends. Manufacturing GDP, China controls 32% of manufacturing GDP. The United States controls 18% of it. We used to be the manufacturing power of the entire world. We're going to get back there under Donald Trump's leadership. Let me give you a second statistic that should worry us. Last year, for the first time in a very long time, America became a net importer of our food. You know what that means? That we import more food than we grow for our own people. So the Kamala Harris pathway is we don't make our own stuff. We don't even grow the food that is necessary to feed our own people. That is a pathway of reliance on the worst people in the world. I want Americans to be reliant on each other and on our own citizens. Let's do one more question.
Hi, my name is Darylyn Horn. I work with WWJ News Radio in Detroit. Stellantis is not an American-owned company, so how will you hold the CEOs accountable and help those people who were laid off?
Well, I think that while Stellantis is not an American company, they do business in America, so they have to actually follow American rules, follow American laws, and respect American workers. And that's what Donald Trump and I are going to fight to make happen. And I think it's very simple. The thing that we want is that we want to make sure that corporations that are operating in this country actually obey our laws. One of the biggest problems, right, and one of the reasons that, you know, Chinese firms are able to undercut the wages of American workers is they don't obey our environmental laws, right? We want clean air and clean water. But if a Chinese corporation is doing business in a very dirty way, that poisons our environment and destroys the wages of our workers. If they're not paying their workers a decent wage, they're undercutting the wages of American workers. We have got to become more self-reliant. We've got to protect our own country, our own people, and our own economy. And that's the Donald Trump plan. Now, let me leave you with a final thought here. And, you know, look, I recognize that we've got just 12 days, or, you know, as we used to say in the Marine Corps, 11 days and a wake-up. That's how long we have. And it's getting down to the wire, and I'm getting excited about it, but it's also hard to believe we're so close to the end. Here's what I'd ask you to do. I'd ask you to think of yourselves as fighters, but fighters not just for a cause or for a set of ideas, and especially not for political candidates. I want you to think of yourself as fighters for your fellow Americans, because there are a lot of people here that aren't at this rally, but a lot of people in the state of Michigan that desperately need better leadership in Washington, D.C. I remember when I was a kid, and I was raised by my grandmother, as a lot of you know, because my mom struggled with drug addiction for a big chunk of my early life. And I remember, because Ohio gets not quite as cold as Michigan, but gets pretty cold in the winter. And I remember sometimes, if times were especially tight, my grandmother, I called her Mamaw, Mamaw would say, you know what, we're not going to turn on the heater tonight. We're going to throw a few extra blankets on the bed, and that's how we're going to get through this winter with our finances still intact. And I happen to believe that we have got the richest and most bountiful energy reserves anywhere in the entire world. If you work hard and play by the rules, you ought to be able to heat your home in a cold winter night. That's what we're fighting for. I've talked to mothers who have lost their kids to, their kid was 15 and took something under peer pressure, and then that child lost his life because a bag of marijuana or something else was laced with fentanyl. And so what would have been 20 years ago an innocent childhood mistake, you maybe wake up with a headache or a lecture from your parents, is now costing a lot of American children their lives. And I met another woman a few weeks ago who told me, she was a retiree, her husband was close to retiring, that they had this tradition where they would do steak night. For 40 years, they would do steak night every Friday night. And I'm not talking about going to a fancy steakhouse. I'm talking about going to the grocery store, buying a nice steak, and having that be their thing. And I think all of us know it's those little rituals with our family that actually make life worth living. Well, she stopped doing steak night last year because under Kamala Harris's policies, groceries just got too expensive. And so something that she had done that gave meaning to her family life for 40 years, she stopped doing because groceries got too expensive. And so over the next 11 days, think about what we're fighting for. We're fighting for that woman to be able to have steak night with her husband on Friday. We're fighting for a kid like me, for his grandmother to be able to turn the heat on when it gets really cold at night. We're fighting for American children to grow up in neighborhoods that are safe enough where they can make a mistake and not have it cost their lives. And the way that we are going to make their lives better is to give the American people a president who is fit to lead this great nation. Vote Donald J. Trump, and make sure your friends and family do too. God bless you all. Thank you for having me. I'll see you soon, Michigan.